We're about to begin in a second. No, I mean, record. Yeah, that's what it means.
Recording in progress.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special meeting of the Public Safety and Transportation Committee. Today is Wednesday, July 29th. I am the chair of the committee, Tariq Lucas. I'm going to introduce the other members of the committee. I see Vice Chair Randy Block, Councilors Pam Wright, Sean Roach, Maria Greenberg, Julie Irish, and Jacob Silber. And non-committee members here in the chamber, I see Councilors Charm, Leary, and President Oliver. And I see Councilor Albright on Zoom. City staff present at the start of this meeting is the city COO, Josh Morse, Chief Timothy Cahoon, City Solicitor Ali Giuliani, and the Director of Community Engagement and Inclusion, Hattie Kerwin-Derrick. And please note this meeting is being both audio and video recorded. We have a big ticket item on our agenda tonight. But before we get to that, we have one small item we need to dispose of. And that is docket number 223-26, Fareed Isayev, requesting a new public auto license. And the petitioner has requested to withdraw the following petition without prejudice. So I will accept a motion on that docket item. Councilor Block.
Move to accept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this before we take a vote? Committee members only, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions? The ayes have it. I believe that vote is 6-0 or 7-0. Okay, the next item, the reason why we're all here. Item 56-26. Councilors Greenberg, Charm, Lucas, Kelly, Farrell, Getz, Damubed, Albright, Krinsman, Roach, Mickley, Bixby, Leary, and Irish, requesting a discussion to review who will respond and how the city of Newton will act should Immigration and Custom Enforcement, ICE, enter the city. The purpose is to ensure that established procedures are properly followed so that all individuals who live and/or work in Newton are protected from ICE engaging in door-to-door actions, harassment, or the unlawful detention of residents and workers. This discussion also serves to reaffirm the city's continued adherence to its welcoming city ordinance. This is a continuation of our meetings in March and our public comment meeting in April. And we are just going to pick up right where we left off, essentially. Before we begin, I just want to thank the administration for creating the immigration webpage on the city's website. I hope everyone has had a chance to review it. I'm sure we'll have some comments tonight about the webpage. So we are going to begin, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh Morse just for some opening comments. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, City Councilors and community members who are joining us this evening. And I appreciate the staff for being here this evening as well to help out. So as Chair Lucas indicated, this conversation started at least with the City Council in March. There was a public hearing in April. We included in the backup for this evening is a letter indicating the steps that have been taken since last we met and spoke, as well as a copy of the letter that I emailed to the City Council back in, I think the first or second week of April, that outlined responses and action items that we took in response to our meeting with the City Council, including the link to the new website. Included in the backup this evening is updates on several items. We continue to field the occasional questions from the City Council, different members as things come up. This, of course, is a complex situation nationally, statewide, and locally. So it is not surprising that because it is complex and oftentimes nuanced, that questions come up and get answered, but those questions can be slightly different because as we find ourselves responding to different issues or kind of processing different issues that are happening either nationally or locally, it's each time it's slightly different. So each of us, whether it be the police department or the law department, the executive office, and others, are looking at each of these instances and making sure that we are properly prepared here in Newton, and that the information that we're providing on our website and the answers that we are providing is based on the latest information that we have available to us. Again, as you'll see in that backup, our departments are staying very close to their colleagues at the local and state level and beyond to ensure that we are availing ourselves of the latest and greatest information, so that we are, again, as prepared as we possibly can be. While I know many of the questions were previously asked and answered, as I mentioned, I would not be surprised if we have some new ones this evening, and we look forward to a healthy dialogue with the City Council. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morse. And I forgot to mention our committee clerk, Miles Starkey, at the computer. And we've also been joined by Councilor Damubed. Okay, committee members. Councilor Roach, go ahead.
There are, I know, two dozen, 3 dozen co-doctors. And will you be, and I know we talked about this earlier today, it just occurred to me, will you be hearing from the co-doctors as well as committee members in the initial round of comments?
I'm going to take hands as I see them.
Okay.
All right. Councilor Greenberg, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CO Morse. I appreciate the update that you sent in the Friday packet. But we have, of course, as you said, more questions. But I just wanted to start our discussion by talking about just the general atmosphere. Border Czar Tom Homan recently stated, quote, "We turned up the heat. We got a lot of work to do. We got more resources to do it. We got more reasons to do it. We're going to see these arrest numbers climb," end quote. He made clear that the administration is targeting not only the criminal records, but those without them as well. The scale of enforcement has escalated rapidly. ICE arrests surged to 10,000 people in a single 5-day period this month, which doubles the agency's previous daily numbers. Tragically, 2 innocent men were killed this month as a result of poorly trained and inadequately vetted ICE agents. Understandably, the public has profound fear and anxiety for the safety of our families and neighbors. That is why it's essential that we, as elected officials, in collaboration with the administration, continue to have this conversation in order to do everything in our power to ensure that any response to immigration enforcement actions in Newton protects the rights, safety, and dignity of every person who lives and works in our city. With that in mind, I am asking for an update on those items and requests made by my fellow colleagues and those made by the public at previous meetings. I appreciate the update in the Friday packet, but I'd like to hear directly so that the public can hear the responses to this list. Some of these topics include an update on police use of body cameras. And next, Chief Cahoon mentioned that police chiefs in Massachusetts are in the process of coming up with best practices on what they are and are not allowed to do when interacting with ICE. Is there an update? Can we have reassurance that NPD is not assisting in ICE in making arrests? And specifically, are Newton police required to intervene if they observe the use of excessive force by federal law enforcement officials? Next, welcoming signs that show that the city bans civil ICE arrests in non-public areas and facilities without judicial warrant and prohibits the use of city property as staging areas for immigration enforcement. In my document, I have an example that is used by Providence, Rhode Island. Next, conduct an active and ongoing Know Your Rights outreach campaign. Can Know Your Rights pamphlets be made available at the library, senior center, city hall, and schools? Also, we all appreciate the improvements made to the Immigration Rights and Resource page, but it's still not clear on how to find that page under the label of government. Could it be added to one of the 7 blue buttons on the city's main page, and could it be listed in the new fabulous Welcome to Newton page? And then finally, guidance and support to frontline city employees if they encounter ICE, including written policies and written descriptions of trainings. Do our employees feel confident in handling these situations? And now with the election season approaching, will our voter rolls and polling places be protected? I've also heard from a loose organizer that the librarians are asking and requesting more training on how to deal with ICE if they encounter them. So I look forward to more details on these topics, and I know my colleagues have others to talk about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Greenberg. I know your first couple of questions were about body cameras and police officers assisting ICE. I'm just going to ask the chief if he could answer those questions. Go ahead, Chief.
Chair, thank you. Happy to answer those, and I appreciate the questions and obviously appreciate the concerns. Number one, so body cameras. We are in the middle of the RFP. I believe that closes either Monday or Tuesday of next week. The request for a proposal on the equipment that will allow us to do the pilot program. As I spoke to you folks, I think it was in March, and I've spoke to several councilors and citizens for that matter, individually. We'd like this done yesterday, but we have to go through the process of procurement. Once we get those, then it's just the logistics of getting the program up and running. That pilot program, I would imagine, would be operational hopefully by the end of the summer. It's a optimistic approach, but that's one I hope to hit. And then if one of the questions was, you want reassurance that the NPD is not assisting in civil immigration. We do not. We are not authorized to by Massachusetts case law. We are not authorized to assist in civil immigration in any way, shape, or form, and nor do we. So no, we are not assisting in civil immigration. We are not assisting ICE in that respect. And then finally, a little more nuanced is, are NPD officers required to intervene? And I think what you said was on excessive force, if they witness a federal officer using excessive force. And I believe that's what you said, Councilor Greenberg. The short answer is yes. The nuanced answer is it's very narrowly defined and fact specific. We talked about this the first time that we all got together on this. We can't put our officers in a position that they are going to intervene with lawful federal authorities. And that's what I want to create the expectation for. So it needs to be, all of these things need to be true in order for them to intervene. Now, that doesn't mean we can't have an approach in any instance of one of these circumstances on keeping the peace and de-escalation and trying to assist and maybe take the tenor down a little bit if officers were to show up at a scene that was, either, moving, rapidly unfolding, moving out of control. Like, that's what we do. And the Newton Police Department, our priority is to ensure the safety of all residents in accordance with Massachusetts law. But we do not enforce similar immigration law. We are not authorized to arrest individuals based solely on ICE detainers. We don't honor ICE detainers, civil detainers, or that is not one of our functions. But we also have no role in determining the legality of federal actions. Now, again, narrowly defined specific instances would have to be present in order for officers to intervene. So our job is to make sure that we keep the peace. And I apologize, I missed one thing. You had talked about best practices. We've all been talking about this. All the chiefs throughout the state have been talking about this. In some communities, it impacts more than others, obviously. The best practices is exactly what I'm talking about now, is keeping the peace, knowing that our residents know we don't enforce immigration law, knowing our residents, whoever that may be in our community, knows that civil immigration status plays no role in what we do day in and day out. So we do not want victims to be afraid to come to us. We don't want folks of any status to have any apprehension about dealing with us. Now, it becomes a little more difficult when we have to, if there's an expectation that we have to intervene on federal actions. And I would just caution that message, that I don't want the public to think that the officers are always going to intervene in every circumstance. That wouldn't be the case. They would have to be narrowly defined circumstances, and they would have to have a reasonable and realistic opportunity to intervene. Mass General Laws, I think it's 6E, Chapter 15, is the duty to intervene, and that's what we would rely upon should we need to do that. I hope that answered most of it, and happy to take follow-up on that.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Councilor Greenberg, you also asked questions about welcoming city ordinance signs, a Know Your Rights campaign, and the city's webpage. Mr. Morris, do you want to address those?
Sure, yeah, I'm going to take two of those and then I'll hand it over to our city solicitor for a few of the others. I'll do the first one, or the easiest one first. On the website, we're happy to take a look at how we can continue to make that as accessible as possible and as obvious as possible. We do have some limitations with our current website platform, but we will look into what we can do from a formatting standpoint. Quite frankly, a small plug, that's part of the reason why we're looking at a new website, but we're still a little ways off from that. So we will absolutely take a look at that and see what we can do, and I'll communicate that back to the city council. With respect to the signs, I think we spoke about this back in March, and I think our position still is pretty consistent on this. There are a few considerations. The city of Newton has thousands of acres of land on thousands of parcels. As we talked about before, that signage is in our belief is not going to stop immigration officers from entering our city properties. And one of the concerns we have is that it creates a false sense of security, or could create a false sense of security. Therefore, I think it would potentially be performative. And because we have so much land on so many parcels as a city of small towns, the sheer volume of signs that we would put out, I think, would be, as I mentioned, not effective at what we're trying to accomplish. That's part of the reason why I think Councilor Albright raised a really good point at the last meeting when she suggested that we possibly look at our main entry points to the city. As I stated in the backup, I think she got onto something that that actually blossomed into an even better initiative, which was when we started to look at these, we recognized that there was an opportunity to not only state that Newton is a welcoming community at those entry points, but really to improve those from a beautification standpoint, so that people, independent of this current issue, people coming into Newton can see how proud we are of our community. So that's it on the signs and the website. And then I will turn over the training and the other question to our solicitor.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Thank you, Chair. I will just tag along to some of what Josh said in terms of the website. We can certainly work on making that as prominent as possible. We've made a lot of efforts to try to do that. And just so that the council knows, we are monitoring that website, making sure that the websites, the links are still live and active. We're doing the best we can to make sure and certainly using it as a landing spot for any new guidance that we may receive from the state or from other resources that we think would be useful to the public. So in terms of know your rights materials, we can certainly look into where we may be able to place those materials so that they are not only accessible on the website, but that there is some sort of paper or something like that. We can look into that, see which is what's the best way to reach residents with that information. Guidance to city employees. So I think that Mr. Moore shared with you in materials that we have conducted training for our department heads, our department leaders, and have provided guidance both verbally and in writing to staff on the issue of encountering ICE. I will have you know, I certainly cannot speak on behalf of all of the city employees, whether they feel confident that they can handle the situations, but we did do quite a bit of discussion with folks about real life scenarios in their departments. And I will share that after some of the more wider training sessions, we did have a couple of employees that are frontline employees that came directly to the law department as we had offered to just chat with us a little bit more about their work and how they could handle this situation. And at least in my experience talking to employees, at least the ones that I talked to, they did feel comfortable after chatting with us that they had the proper tools and information they needed to handle the situation if it ever came about. So I think we have successfully reached out to as many employees as we can. Councilor Greenberg, you mentioned that someone said that the library is asking for more training. I have not heard that. That's the first time that I have heard that information. I can certainly make an effort to reach out directly to the director of the library and work with them in the event that employees want or feel they need any sort of training.
Chair Lucas, I would also just add, if I could, I would draw people's attention, and this is, sorry, speaking to the previous item of signs on city property. I would also just point people's attention to the sections 2 and 3 of the executive order signed by Mayor Laredo that speaks directly to the prohibited use of city property. That was something that I think we discussed at the last meeting, and I will also, one question that was asked and answered, in case there's anybody who's listening or watching tonight that may not have made that meeting or seen the recording. The question was asked, you know, would signage improve our legal standing? Should there be, you know, court actions down the road? And the answer from our city solicitor was that the signage would not have a material impact on that, that our legal standing stands independent of the signs.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Greenberg, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for all the responses. CEO Morse, I'm still not clear. Is the city going to move forward to have those signs installed at the city entrances?
Yes, we are.
It's definite.
Yes, I'm happy to make that commitment. Let me huddle with our team and see if I can get you a better sense as to the timeline on that, because I imagine that would be the next question you might ask.
You're right. Thank you. Well, that's wonderful news. Thank you so much.
All set, Councilor Greenberg. Okay. I don't see any other hands except Councilor Albright. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would like to address the issues related to the Welcoming City Ordinance, as that was mentioned as part of this docket item. So I have had conversation with the ACLU about our Welcoming City Ordinance. And actually, I docketed something in the last term, but it didn't seem to be any interest. dealing with it last term, so it's been redocketed as part of this. But this is, I'm gonna only give you preliminary information because whatever it is has been suggested to us, we want to talk over with the law department and the administration. And I also want to give the caveat that the legislature right now is just out of conference committee. This afternoon came out the final wording of the PROTECT Act. And I'm not sure exactly what's in there yet and how it interfaces with our welcoming city ordinance. So there's work to be done in that regard. But with respect to our welcoming city ordinance, there are 3 or 4 things that I think we should address. There's a section in it's called section 203, which talks about, mentions the word terrorism, and that was raised during the public hearing that you held back in, I guess it was April. And so the ACLU agrees that that whole sentence, which starts with "in addition" and mentions terrorism in it, should probably come out of the welcoming city ordinance. So that's something that we should explore together. We should also explore the 287G agreements. Should we prohibit Newton from participating in any 287G agreements? The PROTECT Act, I know, does mention that, but it's not an absolute bar from getting involved with 287G agreements. There are 2 things in the welcoming city ordinance that have been overturned by one by federal law and one by a Supreme Judicial Court ruling. The first is to take out the prohibition on maintaining data as it violates federal law, and I'm told that that's 8 USC 1373B. So we should make that change. And the other one is in section 405, where we should get rid of the term immigration detainer, as this goes against the Lund decision, the Supreme Judicial Court's Lund decision. So these are the things that we're looking at to make the welcoming city ordinance as best as it can be. As I said, we're going to get some language from the ACLU and then bring it to the law department, and we will begin the discussions on how to and how and whether and when to update that ordinance. So maybe Ms. Giuliani has some questions about that. I don't know.
I don't have any questions at this time, but whenever you have materials that you'd like us to take a look at and begin to analyze from a legal perspective, I'm ready and ready to do it.
Okay, that's great. And could I ask the chief a couple of questions? So, Chief, how would you know if one of our police officers tipped off ICE about a resident of Newton? How would you know that?
How would I know that it occurred?
Yeah, how would you?
Unless I was told or it was officially reported or I found out and we investigated it, I wouldn't.
Okay, so that worries me a little bit. I don't know how to deal with that problem, but
Do
it
you have a
worries me.
specific instance that there was a suspicion of that, or because I don't have that?
Well, Constable Greenberg, can I mention what you told us about? Well, I'll just say it. I understand that there was an arrest made in Newton yesterday, and the suspicion by the organization Luce was that a police officer might have been involved in tipping off ICE.
And do you know what that I've heard about the arrest, but do you know what that suspicion is based in? I mean, if it's merely speculative,
I
but
don't
I'd
know
be happy to look into it if there's some information that would lead us to believe that that was occurring.
I would appreciate that. That would be fabulous if you would do that.
Yeah, if you want some information on that specific, I can share what's publicly available on what happened.
That would be great as well.
So there was a motor vehicle enforcement issue that occurred several days ago. As a result of that, a vehicle was towed. That officer had suspicion that the motor vehicle documents that was presented to him were fraudulent. It turned out they were, which is a felony. That person ultimately came to retrieve the motor vehicle, and the person was arrested on state charges on forging motor vehicle documents, which are, again, felonies. A person was booked into our facility on the felony charges. processed in the manner that were required. And ultimately, I believe ICE notified the police department there was a detainer. They were told, we do not honor detainers, that the person is in custody. And my understanding is the person was bailed from our facility and picked up on the street by ICE.
I understand that, am I correct that when someone is arrested, their fingerprints and their information goes into as it is, a statewide or national database? And ICE can,
National, yeah.
national, so ICE can follow that, which I think is, that's the way it goes. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, we're compelled, number one, it's good public safety that we information share, not with ICE, but with everybody, right? We're compelled to conduct certain processes on arrests, particularly felonies. And that, my suspicion is, much like if we were looking for a person with a warrant, we could query a warrant database, somebody who may have a warrant for their arrest. My suspicion is, I don't know exactly how that works, but they probably have, well, I know they have access to the National Criminal Information Network, which is what that ultimately gets fed into. On when you fingerprint somebody, that identity gets uploaded through the state ID, which is part of Massachusetts statute, and then that ultimately is shared with the FBI. That is the database for all criminal action in the United States. And my suspicion is that's probably what they were alerted to. Does that make sense?
Albright?
Okay,
Oh, Councilor Albright,
thank you. Could I just ask one?
I think you just froze, so if he said something, please repeat it.
Okay, sorry about that. My internet must not be great. It's raining here. If ICE came into the city hall or any other public building looking for information, Chief, would we be able to do anything about that to prohibit them from doing their work in our public buildings?
Well, just speaking for the police department, we would not be assisting in any kind of civil immigration enforcement.
But who's the one that will help? If they go into the clerk's office looking for information about a particular person, and the clerk's office hopefully would know we don't provide information to ICE or what. So how would you be able to help, or who would be able to help to make sure that ICE is not doing its work in our public buildings?
Well, I think that would be in conjunction with the legal department as well. I mean, I would consult with the solicitor on that. But I think if it was information available to anybody in the public, I'm not sure what you could preclude. But if it was information related to civil immigration enforcement alone, I would imagine we could preclude that, absent a court order, or I don't know if the solicitor wants to jump in on that.
I was just going to say, this is something we trained on. So I trained our staff on. So Allie, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, we did indeed train our staff on this. If there are, if they receive a visit from federal law enforcement, there are a number of things to do, but I will say all of the requests essentially come to the law department. If there is, Councilor Albright, to use your example, if an officer were to come to the clerk's office and begin to request information, we have trained our employees on what to do in terms of having the individual identify themselves, where they're from, what it is that they're looking for, and if they have a warrant for the information. That's the extent of what we're asking folks to do, because after that, the instruction is for them to contact the law department for our assistance and handling of those requests.
Okay, that's good to know that you have something in place. And my last question has to do with, now this person who was arrested the other day may not have been a Newton resident. I don't know if he was or wasn't. But I'm wondering if we have any, or if we have anything in place, if a person is a resident of Newton is detained by ICE and they leave behind a family and children, do we have anyone, or do we have any organizational framework to surround the family that's left behind with services and figure out how to help them get through. So that's a tough one, I know, but it's on the top of everybody's mind.
I'll just add, Counselor Albright, we have on the webpage a number of resources that are specifically designed for families, where we can direct people through that webpage and through those resources to services like that.
Okay, so I'm not sure what it says about, how, yeah, I'm not sure what it says. So I can't comment on that. So I'll just have to look at it myself and then ask questions at a later date.
All
Thank
set,
you.
all set, Council Albright?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we've also been joined by Counselor Andrea Kelly on Zoom. Right now, we're going to go to Counselor Block, then Irish, then Roach, then Leary.
Thank you, Chair. Chief Cahoon, I'm interested in how our patrol officers think about this challenge that we're facing as a community. You have any sense about how difficult this is, or how prepared they feel they are to reassure the community regarding everyone's safety? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have plenty of thoughts. I'm not sure I can get in the mind of every police officer. However, I think the tenor is, concern, obviously. Without comment specifically on the instances that have occurred across the country, it's put local police in a very difficult situation. We have limited, really, we're not authorized to interfere like anybody else with federal law enforcement. And traditionally, we've always had great working relationships with other agencies, and I'm not suggesting that we don't have relationships with the agencies now, but this has certainly put a strain, for better or for worse, or for worse in this instance. And I think the offices are probably most concerned with if the expectations were that they could do more than they could. So, I know the hearts of police officers because I am one, and we want to make sure our residents feel safe and secure. And we want to make sure we're problem solvers. We like to show up to scenes and solve problems. These are scenes that could be, we haven't really dealt with them in Newton, I'll be quite frank, since I've been here anyway. But I've seen other city and municipal police officers respond across the country where there wasn't a whole lot they could do to improve the situation. And that's extraordinarily frustrating, particularly to the helpers. So our offices, again, are I wish we had more clear and better direction, or even more clear and better coordination. I don't mean working with folks in civil immigration, but I mean just better communication throughout, right? This has been an extraordinarily difficult time for, our nation, I'll just say it, but also almost as though at some point officers feels as though they're being pitted against another law enforcement entity, whatever that feeling comes from, right? So it's a little bit of frustration. It's a little bit of uncertainty, only because these are very difficult scenes, and a little bit of wishing they could help more. But I think our residents in Newton should know that our officers are there to serve them. We do not consider immigration status in any of our duties, and nor should they be afraid to engage services throughout the city, the state, or through our police officers. But we also cannot interfere with federal law enforcement, as that would be, it's a federal felony to do so. But I would hope our residents would understand that we'll do everything we can under the color of Massachusetts law to try to improve these situations. But I appreciate that question, and that hasn't been asked of me yet.
Well, thank you for reflecting on that. As I hear about everyone's concerns regarding ICE and their potential actions here, um, I think not only about the families that are at risk, but about law enforcement and the very frustrating dilemmas that they face. And I hope that um, if you have any budgetary needs to support our police force, that you'll let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Councilor Block. We're going to go to Councilor Irish.
Thank you, Chair. And a couple questions for the chief. Sorry. Um, There's been, I think, some activity around courthouses, maybe in Newton and in other communities. And I know there are court officers and there may be other sort of, I don't want to say auxiliary police, but other, not part of the Newton Police Department. And I'm just wondering what the relationship is with maybe the court officers or any other, I don't know if the term is right, auxiliary police, and what the jurisdiction is and how that works and how you interact with them.
Sure. So court officers are, they work for the district courts of Massachusetts or the Superior Courts, and they provide security to the building, right, to the physical structures, the courthouses, the grand jury buildings, wherever they may be. That resides in the city of Newton. So as far as crimes are concerned, we can be responsible for swearing out complaints or making arrests on court officer property, or court property rather. We don't have any jurisdiction over court officers, but they have a different function altogether, and theirs is the security of the building and the occupants.
Okay, thank you. So once someone steps out of the building or off the property, that's under the jurisdiction of the Newton Police?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, it's in the city of Newton, so we would have arrest powers even within the building.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I just have one more question, sort of follow up on in terms of community policing you have. Do you have any? We're all trying to sort of look out, whether it's protect, advocate, prevent, whatever it is with our community. Do you have any formal or informal liaisons with any groups in our immigrant community?
We do. We have our Community Services Bureau attend several meetings on several groups. My commander of the Bureau is currently out of work right now, but she can answer that a lot better than I could. But I know she has established relationships in her staff over the years with several of the groups. We try to maintain relationships in that manner so that we have to know the community and the folks that we're providing public safety for, and that's one of the ways to do it. So we have a very robust Community Services Bureau that handles that for us and tries to maintain those relationships.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Irish. We're now going to go to Councilor Roach.
So first off, I'd like to reflect back on what we heard on April 15th. I thought it was a very moving, powerful demonstration of community feelings, community perspective. Not surprisingly, we heard from folks who want the city to do everything it can to keep ICE out of Newton. People are afraid, people are disheartened and frustrated, and people are angry. They view ICE as a law enforcement agency that is acting outside the rule of law, and to do things that offend the values of many of the people in this city and in this room. We heard from folks that ICE is having a direct impact on their lives, that they and others are worried that they or members of their households will be picked up, abducted, arrested on pretense. To say it keeps them up at night doesn't do it justice. It changes their lives now. And that is without ICE necessarily arresting anyone in their household. And we heard from folks that they are concerned about what will happen to families, their families, their families, their neighbors' families, if someone is arrested, particularly if it's the breadwinner in a family or a household that's taken. So I want to note and I want to express gratitude and my own humility in the face of the testimony that we heard on April 15th. So thank you to those of you who are online and in the room who gave testimony. I also want to note the sizable audience that's here tonight. They know that they don't have an ability to speak at this meeting, and they're here to show support for their friends and neighbors and to express their frustration with the lawlessness of ICE. So thank you. Things are fluid, and the reason that I say that is twofold. One is things change. Things have certainly changed since April. ICE's tactics have changed. They've abandoned mass sweeps, for now at least. This week, temporary protected status is being lifted for hundreds of thousands, I may be wrong, it may be millions of people who have been here legally in this country, and the response has been swift. A local agency has already laid off all of their Haitian workers. The world is changing. And the commitment to deportation in the Trump administration remains high. This is not going away. And there are two aspects about this fluidity that matter, right? One is we've got to stay on top of it and understand how it changes, but the other is more fundamental. We have to stay on top of it. This is not something that we can set and forget. This is an ongoing crisis in Newton. It may not be yet a crisis. It might not be crisis proportions, but it is certainly crisis potential. And for the individuals who are affected, it is a crisis. So somewhat along the lines of what Councilor Greenberg spoke about, I'd like to offer a framework to think about what we can do and how we think about the threat of ICE. So we can discourage and prevent ICE from acting in Newton. I think Mr. Morse is correct largely that if ICE is determined to be in Newton, there's not a lot we can do about it, although there are certainly things that we can do to give folks information about how to know their rights and enforce their own rights. So we can gift that information about rights and resources of vulnerable communities. I'm not going to get into that. I think one of my colleagues will, but we need to do more there. We can refine our welcoming city ordinances. I'm not going to expand on what Councilor Albright said, but I think that that's a singular area of focus. We can develop and refine public safety strategy against this threat to public safety. And I'll touch on that in a minute. We can take care of the folks who are feeling vulnerable now, and we can have a plan of action for when folks are taken. So I'm going to touch on the public safety strategy and the plan of action, and I may not be the only one on either of those. But first, a quick process point. The fluidity of this means that we are going to require ongoing, consistent, constant cooperation, communication, and a commitment from the administration, from non-governmental organizations, NGOs, from our faith communities, from advocacy groups, and the city council. We have got to work together. The city administration can lead from ahead and can lead from behind. There are those of us in the city council who have high expectations for this mayor and this administration with regard to the responses across all dimensions, the 6 areas that I talked about in my framework. And I will note that on the communication front, the administration has demonstrated privately a willingness to provide information and solicit input. which I find encouraging. So I'd like to touch on these two topics and invite Chief Cahoon and then other members of the mayor's administration to respond. So, and I think, Chief, you've largely covered it, but I would like to recap. I'm very encouraged by the progress on body cameras and your commitment to roll those out. I think this is a larger public safety issue, which is having its moment with regard to ICE. So I think it's very significant. Anything you need from us, let us know. And I'm very encouraged by the commitment to participate in the development of best practices. I want to challenge you just a little bit on the what you can do versus how you can do it part. I get, and we've had now several conversations about the challenges of policing a legitimate or a legitimated law enforcement agency. But there are going to be scenarios, and I think as part of the best practices, we can think about those scenarios and provide the training for our officers to deal with those in a way that both enhances public safety and prevents the officers from putting themselves in physical or legal harm. And again, I'm going to make the comment I've made before. Police departments have had, over the course of policing as a profession, to deal with new, evolving threats to public safety, whether it's gang violence, disgorge of drugs, cyber crimes, domestic violence, elder abuse, elder fraud. And the expectation, I think, from the city council is that this is a threat to public safety that requires and demands a similar response. And so we're going to keep you on your toes on this one. And I'll pause there if there's anything you want to say in response.
Nope, I'm waiting to hear on your suggestions on public safety strategy. I'm happy to.
So here's the thing. I'm not here with, and so that's a great point. And I think this is not the time for solutions. I think we are in a phase of this. We're in a long phase of this. We're in for the long haul. And what we need is to share a commitment. And so I'm not suggesting anything other than that you and your team continue to really pay close attention to these best practices and be committed to developing strategies and training for dealing with this new threat to public safety, notwithstanding the challenges. And I think we're all both aware of them and sensitive to them. And and I think Councilor Block's point is extremely well taken, right? We need to think about the morale of officers being asked to deal with this particular threat to public safety. Nonetheless, it is one, and so just publicly prodding you to stay on top of this. No solutions.
Point taken, sir.
Thank you. So I'm going to move on to the second point that I want to talk about, which is a plan of action. And I've heard from a number of people that with the recent incident with the arrest of a Newton resident at the courthouse, that there was concern from many, understandably, about the families being provided with the very basics, right? Food, shelter, legal help, continued access to education for school-age children and maybe adults, medical and dental care, and just money, right? And the we know that this is going to happen. We know that people are going to get picked up. Whether Newton, has is relatively isolated this because of our the unique qualities of Newton, or whether we get inundated is to be seen. But we need to have, as a city, a plan of action that says when somebody is picked up, we are going to make sure that across those 6 dimensions, food, shelter, legal, education, mental and medical and dental care, and financial resources, that these families are provided for. And this is not solely a city function. It can't be. It's going to require community groups. It's going to require faith groups, NGOs, volunteers. But the city has a role to play, I believe, in coordinating that plan, in developing that plan, because the feeling is that there's not a plan. There's not a plan that says, if something happens, we know who's going to coordinate the response, and we know who's going to provide the different elements, those 6 different elements of the response. And while the city may not be the right person to lead a case-by-case coordination, the city can certainly play a lead role, maybe the lead role, in making sure that there's a plan in place. And the goal is to be confident in a plan that will help residents, our friends, our neighbors in their darkest moments. And again, it requires communication, coordination, and collaboration. So, we could all talk all night about these 6 different elements, but I would love to hear what the city will commit to doing in order to make sure that the next Newton resident who's picked up, that their family is taken care of, and they're not going to suffer a lack of food, a lack of shelter, a lack of legal help, that they continue to get educated, that they get medical and dental care, and that they don't suffer financially. Thank you.
Councilor Roach, do you need the administration to respond to those remarks?
You betcha.
All right, Mr. Morse.
So what I would say is each situation is going to be unique, and each situation is going to require an analysis of what has transpired. And then from a very high level, we also need to understand, does that family or individual want our help? And I think that's an important thing to consider, because while it may seem intuitive that people in a time of need are going to reach out and want the city or the community's help, they may not want that for a variety of reasons. So I think that's one aspect. And that is not to say, that is not a reason to not embrace members of our community who need our help. What I will say from a broader perspective, in my 18 years working for the city of Newton, I have seen the best in all of us come forward when our community members need our help. And that has stood since long before I got here, and I hope that it will stand long after I am gone. Not that I plan on going anywhere anytime soon, but I think Newton has shown time and time again that when our community members need our support, we are there. I understand, Councilor Roach, that for some of the more complicated issues, let's say a community member needed our support and they needed all 6 areas. That is a Herculean effort. And to your point, and you acknowledge this, there are probably going to be aspects of that the city does not and cannot play a leadership role in. There are other aspects where we can be, and we certainly can help with connecting people with the resources they need. I think our website was a big step towards that. I think this is a partnership with various agencies and groups in the community. And I think it really is, while this is something that is novel and hopefully not long lasting in the grand scheme of things, it is certainly something that we are accustomed to and equipped to be able to act swiftly on, as we have seen with tragedies that have nothing to do with ICE that have occurred over many years here in the community. Again, we have rallied around them, and I think the community and the city council and many mayors have shown that they're very supportive, making sure that we are supporting those individuals at those times of need. And I know that that may seem like a non-committal answer, but I think that again, it is because every single situation is unique. So if I'm speaking in broad terms because I think we would need to go on a case-by-case basis to determine exactly what somebody does or does not need and or want.
So thank you. And I certainly understand that there are going to be, for understandable reasons, people who do not wish to get assistance, particularly directly from the government when their status is at issue. I am, however, going to push back here and ongoing on the notion that because situations are different, that we cannot have a plan and should not have a plan that is a framework that says, maybe it's Luce is running the show, but the city has worked with Luce and these other organizations to say, here's the list of attorneys who are available. Here's the organization or the faith organizations that are going to provide food. Here's how, and so that when the time comes, there's a framework in place that where we're not having to figure it out on the fly because we've said everything's going to be different. We're going to have to adjust maybe, but I'm going to gently push back that we need to have a framework. That the incident in the courthouse recently demonstrated that ad hoc is not quite going to do it. So pushing back a little bit on this. And as I said earlier, I am encouraged by the administration's willingness to continue to share information and solicit input. I'm going to continue to provide my input. Thank you.
And we welcome that input. Your points are well taken, Councilor
you
Roach.
do.
Thank you. Thank you.
All set, Councilor Roach?
Yes, thank you.
All right. We're now going to go to Councilor Leary. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to take it down to a little bit more of a granular level now. I have a couple of specific questions that I would like some information on. One is and I think this would be for the city solicitor, if a Newton resident is detained, can the city take any steps to ensure legal counsel would be available and also to ensure that the person is not sent out of state? I understand that we can lose control over where these people are going and there's a lack of communication. It seems important that the person not be sent to other locations out of state. Is there anything, do we have any plans around that or anything set in policy of how we would handle that specific situation?
From a legal perspective, if someone were picked up and taken into custody by federal law enforcement, we don't have the authority to stop them from moving someone to a whatever location they move that person to. The city doesn't have any authority. That would be us standing in the way of the federal government implementing their law enforcement activities.
I think you misunderstood my question. I wasn't asking the city to intervene. I was asking the city if they can ensure some outside legal counsel, maybe I wasn't clear, that would help keep track of the person or prevent them from being sent to an outside location.
The city doesn't provide legal advice to individual, nor do we provide legal services to individuals. My office represents the city of Newton. What we have done to ensure that people can access that type of information is to put it on the website. We've got information about detention resources. We have over half a dozen, I'm looking at maybe 10 under the category of finding legal help. so that people can ensure that they can get in touch with a lawyer to assist them or their family members in a detention matter.
Okay, that was actually my question.
Yeah.
The resources outside the city.
Hold on, Counselor Leary, can you speak more into the mic?
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought I was pretty close into the mic. I'm kissing it now. Okay. So thank you for that question, for the answer to my question. The other thing is, I am concerned about folks that are under temporary protected status. And do we know the number of those workers in Newton? Many of them are very essential workers that work in our nursing homes, group homes, construction jobs, and others. And I'm very concerned about the loss of these important workers. And do we have any plans how we might manage or handle that? And that's a hard one, I think.
Yeah, Counselor, I cannot, Human Resources would really be the best office to answer a numbers question. I cannot speak to the numbers of employees covered by TPS. What I can say generally is when the administration began its efforts with respect to TPS status, I was in communication with the Human Resources Department to work with them in identifying any employee who we felt needed some added support. I'm aware of only one person who was covered, and we were able to assist that individual in working with their counsel to work with the federal government to make sure that they had the proper paperwork that was necessary to make sure they could continue working and continue to be in compliance with whatever TPS requirements they had. So we've been working with HR. HR has been vigilant about it and trying to identify whenever we might need to support an employee.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer to that.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Leary. We're now going to go to Counselor Charm.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo many of the sentiments of my colleagues that have come before me. I won't speak at length about them, but I do want to acknowledge that we are in a very dynamic situation that has not gone away. And as my colleague, Councilor Greenberg, said at the beginning, the authorities are excited to grow these numbers. We have an evolving situation with TPS status, making tens of thousands of people across our state newly vulnerable. And we have had a number of recent incidents that have been mentioned already in tonight's conversation that go to show that this is happening in Newton and has been happening since our last conversation. I would like to follow up on 2 points. One is one that my colleague, Councilor Roche, just spoke to. I think given the fact that this is a different, the nature of this threat is different today than it was several months ago. We're no longer really thinking that this is a Chicago or a Minneapolis. Instead, it's much more likely to be a Biddeford or, the Newton Courthouse in June. How can we focus on being able to respond in a way that makes our city proud and takes care of the people who are living and working here, knowing that this will continue to be a growing threat and we may see these numbers rising Um, on the response side, I completely agree with you, Mr. Morse, that our community can rise to this challenge. It is not entirely a governmental responsibility to be helping these families respond. But we do have all the tools around us, and I think the city does have a role to play in helping to make sure that that nervous system is connected. So following up on Councilor Roche's points about the 6 areas of help where people need, I would love to work with you and with City Hall to let's have a conversation with some of these groups. I think there are probably a couple points within City Hall that would be relevant to have at the table. That should be notified if there is a family that's in this situation. You know, maybe they could be helpful in some way if the family wants that. But also with our interfaith leaders, with those who are in our community who are delivering food and groceries on a volunteer basis all the time, those who are generously willing to help with covering legal fees, and those who may be immigration lawyers themselves and willing to jump in and help a neighbor. I think we have the tools here. And so I would love to say, how can we make sure that we get Luce and the others? I think we know that there are more than just Luce, but Luce is an important group in terms of when we have these cases coming in, get these people together and let's have that so that any point that could be a trusted input for these sorts of cases, and you know, the community, those who are closest to those vulnerable communities would know that if they have someone in their community who has now faced this and is in an emergency response situation, they know who to turn to. I think we can accomplish this with just 1 or 2 meetings, and I'd be happy to be there and help. The second thing that I want to follow up on, well, actually, first, I'll pause. Mr. Morse and Hattie, any response to that? Can you commit to helping to host that meeting with me?
I think I can confidently say that our door is always open and we are always willing and able to host meetings and maintain an open dialogue. And I think it is important that we maintain those touch points because, as many have said, and I said in the beginning, the situation is fluid. And if we don't remain fluid, that will become problematic. So it's important that we are staying in touch.
Thank you. I think there also could be some additional resources that we could add to the website. I think the website is fantastic. I am very appreciative of all the work that has been put there and the resources that are there. But in addition to legal services, I think there are some other things that we could put there. The second thing that I wanted to speak about tonight is something that came up in April. At the end of that April session, I recounted, feels like there's 4 things that have really come up. Pulled up my notes again, and we've talked about signs. We've talked about police and training of city workers in general. We've talked about changes to the Welcoming City Ordinance. A 4th thing that came up in April that I think we can all commit to taking a look at, and I hope that I can get your commitment to taking a look at with me, is looking at some of the digital forms of risk that exist, including some surveillance technologies that are being used across the country, and making sure that we are cognizant of the risk that those can pose. Some of these include automatic license plate readers. That's not them exclusively. Chief Cahoon, you and I have had a great conversation about this in the past. And I think we have a lot of room to have a productive discussion about the role that this could play in Newton. And so I would love to just get your commitment, and maybe Ally, your commitment. Let's work on this together. Let's figure out a way that we can meet these risks, and let's put something in front of this council. So Chief and Ally would love to just flag, would love to meet with you on that. I wonder if you have any concerns that you'd like to share initially.
Council, I'll go first, Solicitor, if that's okay. I am in favor of automatic license plate readers. I think I've gone on the record with that, with safeguards in place. And that's what I think you're talking about. And I'm happy to have that conversation. I think there are plenty of compromises and plenty of ways we can do this and enhance public safety while addressing those concerns. So absolutely, I'm willing to have that conversation.
Councilor Charm, I'll just reiterate what I think I've mentioned on more than a few occasions. I'm always happy to work with city councilors and to talk through some of these issues. So I'm happy to join you and the chief and anyone else in the administration on some of the concerns that you've raised.
Thank you very much. I look forward to us continuing to figure out how we can be closing some of these loopholes and making everyone feel safer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Charm. Councilor Damubed, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Lucas. I also want to just associate myself with some of the comments, especially those from Councilor Roach and Councilor Charm, and reiterate the gratitude that was shared for everyone who's in the room tonight and for those who came on April 15th and spoke up. I think my views tonight are really informed by what you shared on April 15th, by the notes I took and reread and reflected on. And they're also informed by, frankly, my Christian faith and the Jewish tradition upon which that is built. That tells us that not just tolerance, not just welcoming, but true and active care for the stranger, the alien, the immigrant, and the neighbor is what we are called to. And if you'd like citations on that, I'd point you to Exodus 22:21, Leviticus 19, Deuteronomy 10, Deuteronomy 24, Jeremiah 22, Ezekiel 47, Matthew 25, Luke 10, Hebrews 13. So care is active. And what I heard on April 15th is that we are looking for an active response to the crisis that our nation finds itself in, and that at times has come home here already, and that may again come home to Newton. For some visible action, because nearly everybody's family was an immigrant in this country at some point, and we are all here because somebody fought to make sure that we could be and fought against the idea that we shouldn't be. I love what you shared, COO Morse, that the effort to identify opportunities for signage at the city's boundaries turned into a beautification effort. I think that is exactly the model that we need to be approaching this with joy and community building, because these things that are coming that are intended to scare us, to break up community, to create cruelty and division. And I think what I would like to ask is that we continue to take a joy-seeking and a joy opportunity-seeking approach. I shared with Chief of Staff Dana Hansen and with the Director of Arts and Culture, Meryl Kessler, a great program that I saw from the city of Somerville to commission an artist to create a mural that celebrated the immigrant communities in Somerville, that also integrated a QR code that led directly to Somerville's equivalent of our website or our resource page that we've created that has been mentioned several times. That is just a way of creating joy in the community that went out to restaurants on napkins and was seen on trash cans and park benches and all kinds of great ways that brought people together. And I'd like to see that we are creating and looking for opportunities to do that kind of outreach that goes beyond an approach that says, well, there's a website and there's a platform and there's a door that's open, to we're stepping through that door and making some things available, putting some resources in hands. I know that our economic development team is doing outreach to local businesses as part of their economic development strategy. Are they, or can they also use that as an opportunity to share know your rights info with them? I have in front of me a great packet of resources that volunteers in our community are sharing. Could they collaborate on that effort? It's great to hear that city staff have received training on engagement with federal law enforcement. I believe I heard Solicitor Giuliani say that. Have teachers and school staff also received any additional training or guidance? That would be good to know. I think the door is open and resources on the website approach was a really important and good first step. And now we need to be a little bit more active in that response and take an approach that says, here's how we can do that, not here's why that's challenging. So I'd like to ask, can the administration across departments commit to taking a sort of yes and approach to looking for opportunities for outreach, especially ones that are organized around joy and community building, and pursuing them? Or perhaps are there any that you've undertaken that you'd like to share with us tonight? Thank you.
So what I would say is the Laredo administration, one of our many North Stars, is absolutely building community. We want Newton to be a community where everyone feels welcome. And so we absolutely can commit to anything that builds community and anything that ensures that people feel welcome here. I think there's synergy there. I will also suggest that the work that we do collectively, whether it be the city council, the administration, our residents, our groups, well, a lot of our energy and time and focus is on ICE and the response to ICE. I think there is an opportunity to look at that and, to use your word, Councillor, to ensure that the steps that we take have a lasting impact beyond the current situation we find ourselves in. I think many of the opportunities that we explore, to your point, the earlier one about making sure that the community, that we have beautification opportunities where we are not only making the statement that Newton is a welcoming community, but that it looks and feels like a welcoming community. I think there are going to be other opportunities as we start to work together on this to ensure that the steps that we take to respond to the current situation are long lasting and ensure that people for generations feel welcome here, and that we are building community. So I think there's a lot of ways in which our short-term needs will also meet our long-term goals and our vision. So that's a long way of saying yes. I do think that there are plenty of opportunities. Our door is always open. Our virtual door is always open. My phone's always on, as are everybody here. And that we are all ears if there are suggestions, but we'll be brainstorming too.
Councilor Damabed, are you?
I'll just add, CEO Morse, that I totally agree with you and thank you for that. And I'll just reiterate that I think what's really important is that we, while facing the challenges that are ahead of us around this issue, prioritize taking some steps that achieve all the things that you said and, gets our website out there into people's hands or something like that, gets these resources out there quickly and make sure that they're readily available for the next probably 2.5 years in particular.
Okay. I just have a few questions for the chief. It's about something that Councilor Albright said earlier in this meeting about an individual who was arrested yesterday and then was detained by ICE. Chief, when NPD made the arrest, I just want to make sure no one in the department asked about the individual's immigration status, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And MPD did follow standard protocols in obtaining the person's name, biographical information, home address, and you fingerprinted them, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. And do you know where the individual was detained by ICE?
I think out on Washington Street. I'm not sure exactly. I know it was after he was released from our custody.
Okay, but it wasn't in the courthouse is what I'm getting at.
It was not.
Okay, good. And then this is a question I don't know the answer to. Is Newton District Court, is that city-owned property or is that state property?
I better answered by the solicitor. I believe it's state.
The chief is correct, it's state property.
And I believe the state's executive orders and laws would make that place a protected space, correct?
The,
I would have to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, state rules and regulations, and statutes would apply to that property.
They do apply to that property.
That's my understanding, yes.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Albright, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I should have said this when I spoke earlier, but I want to make sure that I thank you, Mr. Chair, and the Public Safety Committee for making this opportunity for this special meeting on this special topic. And I want to thank those of you guys from the administration, Mr. Morris, Ms. Giuliani, the Chief Cahoon, all of you, and there may be Hattie, Kerwin, Derek. This feels like a very collaborative and let's work together kind of a meeting. And I so appreciate that. So I really wanted to just say thank you.
Okay, all right, you're very welcome. Any other questions for the administration? I'm not seeing any hands. I see Councilor Roach. You want to speak? Or
I think that Councilor Albright's statement is a good note to end on, and I move hold.
Councilor Roach has moved hold. Any discussion on the motion? Nope. Okay, let's do this on a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think Councilor Roach said aye.
1-0.
All right. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion is held. The item is held. That is our last item for the evening. We are adjourned at 8:30. Good night.
Recording stopped.